Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. Um, I appreciate everybody from coming back, and I am glad y'all gave me a week off. I think they covered with y'all that my wife and I were on a trip for our 20th wedding anniversary, and it was pretty nice. We got to go a couple of different places on a cruise ship where I was able to run into some fans of the show, which, you're halfway around the world and you're riding on the back of a bus headed to go do an excursion. And the guy looks at you kind of funny and asks if you know chickens, and it just kind of goes from there. So I told we were in the Dominican Republic, and his nickname is Wi-Fi because he says he has the best Wi-Fi on the island. But that's what people call him. I don't know if that's just what people call him on the tour bus or whatever. But, I wanted to give him a shout out. And also ran into somebody that's from the Philippines that says that her brother watches the show, but she wished for his name not to be mentioned. So we'll respect that privacy. Speaking of that, with AB 928 and all the publicity that it's getting, and Tommy Carano, I think is the right way to say his name. This guy, he pretty much had them show up to his house, PIP breeder, doing all the stuff right. And he does not participate in the sport. But back when it was legal, he did. And they took most of his chickens and a lot of his old historical memorabilia. No reasoning, nothing, no anything. So with that, we've got a lot of guys that, a few months back, people started talking about discreet shipping because they wanted it to be, they didn't want what was normally stuck on the outside of the box because they didn't want their mail lady or somebody else to see a package or something like that and run the risk. So it's getting to be more and more of a thing. And a lot of y'all have seen the Show Pro name and some of that stuff that we've been putting on, like the pellets, the exhibition feed, and that kind of stuff. So, you'll probably see a lot more of that. And the image of the raging rooster with guns in his hand, we're going to tone that down a little bit. We're going to start making some changes to the website to make it more people friendly. Still going to be about game roosters and game birds and animal nutrition and educating people on how to raise healthy and happy birds. But we're going to kind of slide away from the image of the sport because, we've also had a lot of people reach out and say they really like our show. They really like the information that they're getting, but they're terrified that, like so many others, we're going to get kicked off of YouTube or kicked off Facebook. So in going with that, you will start noticing some changes to, I guess you could call it the aesthetics. Hell will freeze over before we change the product because that's something that y'all have been getting for, is it 4 years now, Jeff? Close to
4 or 5.
Something like that.
Some 6. Right. The
guys he knocked that out of the bell. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's guys that started with the breeder supplement about 6 years ago. And
yeah,
the breeder supplement is honestly the same as Rapido, right? And it's the same as your Show Pro, right? Supplement. And but we're making it for different chicken people because chicken people don't all like to get along, right? So we got 3 products, all the same, different name. But with everything going on with the sport, right now, just for your safety and ours, it's probably good that we slide away from, that image. So just so you know, you're going to see it coming. I laughed when Carrie said, we're not changing the product. Well, guys, I make the product. So there ain't a chance in hell that product's going to change. I don't care what anybody says. Okay. And if you want to see it, I'll show you the formula. You come on up. You come up and give me a visit in Pennsylvania, and I'll show you where it's made, who makes it, and the formula is under lock and key. So
it ain't changing.
It ain't changing. It ain't changing until I tell you it changed, right? So if I come on this show and I tell you, hey, I made it better, right? This is what I did. Well, till that day happens, it ain't changing.
Despite what people are saying, because we've heard that a lot. We have guys that tell us what's going on in the worlds that we have been blocked from because people. I don't know why. Well, like, why do grown people block grown people?
Oh, Jesus.
On Facebook.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not crying. I'm still here.
They blocked me from the page. They blocked me, from as a friend. They blocked me to and I don't even know what the hell I did. So,
I mean, anyway. Hey, I gave really good money for that part of it. And that's why we had to get a new Facebook page, because I got blocked from it a couple months in. And I'm like, I gave you money for this. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you all about that you'll start seeing some changes. The feed and stuff that y'all get, the exhibition feed that has that Show Pro on it, that's actual birds that take the product and use the product. That's more the image that we'll be going with. Chew posted a comment earlier today or yesterday with one of his birds. He actually gets the stuff and ships it to the Philippines, so his birds get it. It's a great product, and we're going to keep it that way, but we're going to make it look a little different. Tonight, I watched the show last week. The Wi-Fi on the boat was absolutely atrocious. I could not do anything with video, but I did get to watch it, and it was a great show where y'all talked about poultry defects. And, Rip said before we went live that he's got some stuff that he opened his drawer up, reached way to the back files and pull out, and he's going to lay some stuff on you guys tonight that y'all might not have heard, and he's going to explain some of the whys some of this stuff is the way it is and what makes it so important and how it's going to make you a better breeder.
And we need you guys to ask questions as we're going along. Now, don't ask stupid questions about the sport, because we're not going to put them up on screen. But if you have serious questions about breeding your birds, here's your chance to ask it. Put them on there. I got a man with 50 years experience or more. So tonight's your night. Ask your questions. Rip, it's all yours.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I'm asleep. Going back to sleep. Sorry about that. Hey, it's good to be here tonight. I enjoyed the last week, and I'm looking forward to this week. And like Jeff said, if you've got a question, bounce it in there, because when I get on a roll, I tend to keep rolling and not take a deep breath and pause like I should be. So, but last week
you're passionate about what you're talking about, Rip. So
is that the same thing as have blinders on? I don't know, but last week we were careful.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Last week we were talking about structural defects, and I've got a few more of those tonight. And then I want to kind of shift gears And I want to talk to you about some defects that you might never even have thought about considering them to be defects, but they are. So one of the first things I want to talk about tonight is short backs. Is the back length important? Back length is directly related to body capacity. Longer backs gives you more body capacity. I can always tell at a glance when birds have a back that's too short for what they are, because you'll see the tail starting to come up. You know, we talked last week about squirrel tail. The squirrel tail is one where the tail comes forward towards the head past 90 degrees. And that's always associated with a short back on a bird. And hand in glove with short backs are narrow backs. I like to take these two fingers, thumb and forefinger, and put them right up behind a bird's wings and slide them back down along that body. And I like to feel about how wide that body is. Now, it's going to start out kind of narrow, and it's going to reach its widest point at the hip joint. And then it's going to taper back towards the tail. But that part where it tapers back towards the tail is very important, believe it or not. If you look down on top of it, is it a sharp taper? In other words, does it look like a piece of pie that my mother would cut for me, you know, a sliver? Or is it one like my grandmother would cut for me, and it was considerably larger and wider piece of pie? But that, again, ties into body capacity, how they digest their food, how they're able to lay, how they are able to do the things that chickens need to do and do them efficiently. And you can tie that into most anything on a chicken. You know, good body capacity affects every aspect of a bird. You know, the skeletal structure, the muscle structure, their ability to perform, their ability just to be chickens, you know, and that's where a lot of folks get out of sync and they forget that chickens need to be chickens. And if they don't have the body to do it, you're not going to have very good chicken there. Another back issue that I see frequently, more so than I ever used to before, is what we call a roach back, where there's an actual hump in the back. Okay, that's caused from a upward curve in the back in the skeleton. Okay, that affects the whole skeletal structure at that point, because that usually when it curves upward, there's a slight twist at one side or the other, and if it goes up and it causes the back half of the body to twist to the right, it affects the way that bird is able to walk, the way it's able to scratch, the way it's able to forage, the way it's able to breed. All of that is tied into that. Moving further down on the back, or from the back, we get into shank deformities. The legs, are they twisted, bent, or I've even seen them unnaturally swollen. But what I usually see is where they're twisted and the bird's toes, instead of pointing straight ahead, turn inward like this. And it's almost like they're stepping on their toes when they try to walk. And that's just caused from a problem in the skeletal structure. Shortened outer toes while we're on toes. This is something that you see, and when it's usually a shorter toe, it's usually the outside toe that's shorter. That's I think the correct term is brachydactyl.
That's going to affect their balance, their movement, like everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's much more common in feather-legged breeds, like Cochins, Brahmas, silkies. Silkies are bad about having a shorter outer toe. Um, and sometimes not only will those outer toes be shorter, but they'll actually be fused to the middle toe. And that's really affecting their balance and their ability to move and get around, because that throws the whole thing off. I don't see it much in clean shanked birds, but I have seen it occasionally. So with your game fowl, are you liable to see it? Probably not, but there is a possibility. And while we're on balance, one thing that we kind of touched on just a little bit last time was the bird's overall balance. In APA terms, we call that the body type or the shape. Remember, each breed has its own unique shape. Um, some of us old timers would call that body station, how they stood and how they displayed themselves, what they looked like. You know, some breeds, Rhode Island Reds, have a very horizontal body shape. Games and some other breeds have more of an upright posture to them. Your Oriental breeds, like your Cochins, your Brahmas, have a forward tilt. They actually tilt down in the front. And a lot of that is directly related to where the legs attach to the body. And Rhode Island Reds, the legs attach about just right in the center of the body. So they're able to maintain that balance. Where your games, particularly your modern games, that it's a little bit further forward and they puts more weight in the rear, so the body kind of comes up in that upward type posture. And the opposite thing for Cochins and that sort of thing. We got any questions so far, Jeff? I haven't been watching the comments or anything.
I haven't seen a whole lot, but we do have this one.
How do you maintain a family of chickens for years to come? I created 4 main families of my birds, and I maintain them through the female side. And rather than maintain them through the male side, and the reason I did that is because if you try to maintain a line of chickens from the male side, you lose a male, the chances are you really set yourself back. But if you maintain it through the female side, where every female in that breeding pen is related, mother, daughter, sisters, aunts, cousins, grandmothers, granddaughters, whatever, they're all related. You lose 1 or 2 of those, you still got your family going. But every so often you cross males from another line into there, and that's how you get your genetic diversity. They are related. They're not closely related, but they're very loosely related. That line of reds that I have has been going on for about 90 years now, I think, without any outside blood being brought into them. It's a little confusing to talk about it, but once you kind of wrap your head around what you're trying to do, it becomes much simpler. It's very easy to. It's one of the easiest breeding methods I've ever used.
Hey, Rip, quick question.
Yes, sir.
About a month, maybe 5-6 weeks ago, when we talked about building a legacy flock and selection and line breeding, would you say that in that episode that's where you kind of went really in depth on how to maintain a family once you have it?
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking that we did cover that, but I wanted to double check so that way, if he wants a deeper dive into that.
I don't have any idea of even how long ago that's been, but I know we've talked about that previously. So you just
I'll
have to
find
go
that
back
figure.
go back through the files. Let's see. Will toe punch or cutting the web used for making different breeds have any developmental issues? None whatsoever. I've been toe punching chicks for 60 years, 65 years now, and not had any problems at all. I have heard of folks who cut the web and they have had some problems there with the toes wanting to splay out a little bit too much. But using that toe punch where you're cutting, just punching a small hole in that web, you're fine. Now, some people have problems with that toe punch getting it to work because when they punch it, there's a little tag of skin that's still hanging on there. And if you don't pull that off, it'll grow back and you can't tell the toe was punched. Two things you can do. Turn your punch upside down so the pin on the punch comes up through the web instead of going down through the web. You put it come up through the web. That usually punches a very clean hole. If it does leave a little tag, just take your fingernails and pull it off, and they won't go back.
Or get on Amazon and order you another pair. They're only like $5 or $6.
Yeah, you could do that, but I'm basically cheap. I've got the same punch I was using back in 1980.
Well,
they were
that
made
thing
better
was
then.
made. Yeah, it was made a lot better than the $5 ones on Amazon now. I promise.
Well, this is a national band and tag punch, and
well, there you go. It was also made here.
It was made in America, made out of quality ingredients and materials, and it's the same design that it was back then.
We knew what you were talking about. Quality stainless steel.
See, when checking a rooster,
so Alexander wants to know. Yeah, go ahead. You got it?
He was told the entire body conformation is the best. I agree with that. However, if the rooster performs not so well, how much of that performance type will transfer to the next generation? Alexander, a lot of that's going to depend on the female you mate him to. I like to do a thing called compensation mating. And I will take and evaluate my birds. And if I have a male that I want to use, you have to do an honest evaluation of that bird. What are his strong points? What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? In other words, what are his faults? What are his defects? And for a female to mate to him, I look for a female that offsets his weaknesses. In other words, if he has a short back, I look for a female that has, here's a question for you, Kerry.
All right.
Do I look for a female that has an extra long back or more moderate length in back like the standard calls for?
So, despite popular belief, it is my understanding most of the physical traits come from the hen. And not so much the rooster.
I've heard that rumor too, but I haven't been able to prove it.
I haven't either.
Yeah. So
what I look for.
Yeah. You want to go with the longer back female.
No.
Nope. You're going to go with the moderate?
Going to go with the standard length, the length that the standard calls for. Okay. Because if you've got a short back male and you breeding to a really long back female, what you're going to get is short back birds and long back birds. You won't get any in betweens. Just never works out that way. So if you take a short back male and breed him to a female that has the desired length of back, you'll get much better results that way.
And see, Frank he said that maybe when breeding for athletic abilities, but I would think that having the proper body type and the proper nutrition is going to be a key factor in that. I mean, whatever you want to get your bird to do.
A good friend of mine says if you breed your birds to the written standard, you will have birds that are capable of doing what the breed was created to do.
Now, if that is not a very politically correct way of saying it, I've never heard it in my life. But that is why the standard is as definitive and as strict as it is.
Yes.
Because that's the standard. That's the perfect bird. That bird's genetics, they are what they are. And I mean, everybody knows some birds are more athletic than others. Like, you take game fowl, they like to run around and do stuff. You look at a Cochin or a Orpington, and they might move around their pen once or twice.
Well,
you take
their
a
body
red,
is not built for moving around.
Right. You take a Rhode Island red, and they're going to prance around and look beautiful and hop up on their perch and, maybe hang out with their lady. They'll move around a little bit, but not a lot. They'll just look good.
Well, I'm you know how I feel about reds, but I agree. They do look good.
All right. A couple more questions are in. Are you done with that one?
I'm done. Stick a fork in me. I'm done.
Okay. Well, and we covered this, but just to reiterate, Clark wants to know what causes the tail to lean to one side, and
Clark,
is it genetic or something that happened?
Clark, it is called a rye tail, WRY, and the majority of times it's a genetic fault. I have seen birds that have rye tails when you processed them, that there was a misalignment in the skeletal structure that caused it. The back skeleton the vertebra twisted to one side and caused that to happen.
But as far as we know, it is genetic, right? It's not. Yeah, it carries forward, and it can be hard to get rid of.
Yes, it is. It's a recessive trait that, and I still fight it to a certain degree in the reds that I've had, and they've been bred really well for a long, long time. But just when those genes align and they get just right, boom, it's going to crop up and you're going to have to deal with it again. And most people, and I talked about this last week too, but when you talk about not breeding a bird and it comes up with a fault or a flaw, and 99 times out of 100, somebody will tell you, well, just get rid of the birds that have the fault. You'll get rid of it that way. You want to get rid of the birds that have the flaw, as well as the birds that produced that bird.
Yep.
But
so you got to get rid of the parents.
Make the flaw.
Yep.
Okay.
It's hard to do it, but sometimes you got to get rid of the parent stock. Or
it's absolutely hard to do it.
Yeah. All right. So Mill Branch said, can you maintain a family for years with just starting out with a trio? Right. So if you just got 2 hens and a cock, right, can you maintain family for years? I'll let you go first, but I have thoughts on this as well. Huh? No?
My thoughts are no, you can't, because you don't have enough genetic diversity in there to keep going.
But we don't know if the trio is related. And we don't know if the hens are related, right? So,
well, then it's a crapshoot, but you're going to run into problems, I think.
You're going to narrow the line. So
when I did it, I started with 4 pen sisters. They were all half sisters. And I started with 2 males that were not related in any way to those females. And that's how I started mine.
And you
Now, what's
ran
your
out
thoughts?
of gene pool. Well,
You can, but I didn't.
you know what? I would personally, I would start with the trio, and I would hatch as many as I could hatch, right? And and make sure that I'm tracking what come out of each hen. So the hens are separated, the eggs are marked. They're the egg, the chicks are in netting. They're in nets, so you know what's what, right? And either I mark them, I wing band them right away, or you bring them up separately, right, and see what you got, and then start working. Actually, you're kind of splitting your family at that point because you're coming off of those 2 hens with 1 rooster. I think you could do it. I think it's going to be a lot of work to not bring in outside. That's where I agree with you, Rip, that you can narrow and if you don't have the right stuff starting out with that trio, you can work yourself into a corner in a hurry. And
Yeah, you really can. If you have to get outside blood, go back to the person you got your birds from to begin with and get birds from him.
Yeah.
If you get birds from Bob and pretty soon you got to have outside blood, don't go get some from Sam. Go back to Bob. Sam's birds are not related to yours. Bob's birds are related to yours, just not very closely related. There's less genetics to get screwed up.
Now, I want to hear your comments on Frank James put in, Johnny Jumper told him in the 80s, and Johnny was a well-known name, and bred, and he would breed brother and sister generation after generation until most of the birds would be culls. Then he would take the one, of the few birds that were not culls, then he would breed them to something not related. And that kind of you just touched on that. If you're going to go to all that work to clean out that bloodline of flaws, why would you want to, are you setting yourself back to go get outside blood?
Wide outside blood. Yeah, I just have nightmares about doing that because I've seen too many people ruin a good family of birds doing that.
Right. Unless you went back to where you got the birds from to begin with,
exactly.
And you're working on the same line. So
exactly.
Yep. All right. We kind of touched on that with the other one. I just wanted to clarify that. So.
And in a sense, what he's talking about is pretty much the same thing they do with the Cornish crossbirds. They are so inbred that it's a mess. And then they do that last final cross between 2 inbred lines to get the better production birds.
TJ said it's good to see you back on the podcast. Sheldon Game Farm says breeding is an art, and that is 100% true.
Absolutely.
And the best selection of each particular broodstock pedigree and genetics, male, female, will dictate the fate of the offspring.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah. And honestly, Sheldon, I wish that our birds had pedigrees like they used to, and they still do with the other species of animals, because I think that would tell you a lot.
They were coming in there fast and furious, so I don't know if we got them all or not. Alexander asked about temperament. How about temperament? Do you take a well-tempered hen to an aggressive rooster to offset the next generation?
May work, may not. Temperament is highly heritable. And I have heard that it is more influenced by the female side of the mating. Again, that's not something I've been able to prove, because I've been blessed in that I work with a breed that has a pretty good temperament. So I've not had to try that theory.
Now, I can say that I do know somebody that works with American Breasts that had a cockbird that was an absolute jerk. And they mated that bird, pair mated with the sweetest, most docile hen, and the offspring was better. Now, does that happen every time? I don't know, but I know it did happen that time. That person wrote a pretty lengthy article about it and noted it a good bit.
Like I said, temperament is not something I've had to contend with very much. I've been very blessed.
All right, Carrie, you're 36 minutes. We're going to give Rip a chance to have some sweet tea, and you're going to roll your clip.
We will be right back.
Celebrate with Rapido Rooster and enjoy 10% off site-wide. Whether you're gearing up for the next show or ensuring your flock's peak performance, now's the perfect time to stock up on our top-tier game fowl supplements. Shop now. www.rapidoroosterusa.com. Hurry! This deal ends at midnight on May 5th. Maybe later, depending on your time zone.
Or, it maybe depends on what kind of mood. Tequila 10 is the promo code. I thought with Cinco de Mayo, a lot of people tend to, I understand it's a made up holiday by Americans to go to Mexican restaurants and drink margaritas, but in support of that, I felt like Tequila 10 was an appropriate coupon code for 10% off.
Sure.
So,
and that's a good deal. Y'all need, when the show's over, you need to hit the website.
I'm gonna flat out tell you, based on what I have seen, there's been a few that have hit it pretty hard, and I love it because the guys at the mill, I hope they like overtime because they might be going to need some more.
All right, now wait a minute. Hold on a second. Just we're going to pause just for 1 second. I'm going to correct you. So the man before you, we're not going to mention any names, and now it carried over with you. We are not a mill. We do not grind and process grain.
I'm so sorry. I should have used the word blender.
In the mineral mixing blending.
Yes.
Okay.
The blending facilities.
And those guys are getting hammered right now. Okay. It is springtime and we're an agricultural company. So they're getting it handed to it pretty hard. They're working 50-hour weeks and they're complaining. All right. Back to the show.
But we appreciate y'all helping them make some overtime.
Yeah, they don't appreciate it, but yeah.
I would like to talk now about some things that you may not have considered being a fault or a defect that needs work. Things like chronic prolapse in females. If you're not sure what a prolapse is, that's where the reproductive tract comes out the back end of the bird. There is some train of thought out there that those birds that have chronic or that have prolapse are capable of transmitting that weakness on to their chicks. And Jeff, you probably see a lot more prolapse than I do, but it's treatable to a certain degree, but it's not really 100%, is it?
It's not. And here's the thing, guys. Okay. Once you, I just cringe every time somebody shows a picture of a super jumbo egg on their Facebook page or something, in a post, because they think it's neat that, their hen just laid an egg the size a goose would lay. Here's the thing. When you stretch out those tendons, ligaments, and muscles that, lay that egg, she is more prone to do it later on in life and do it again and again and again. Right. So once you basically tear a muscle out of its proper position, it never functions the same. So there's no need for jumbo eggs with laying hens, right? That they are not a good thing, and you can't set them anyway. They're not going to hatch, right? And if they do hatch, the chick ain't going to be worth a hoot. So you need to control how much you're feeding your hens and keep that egg size right there at about 50 to 55 grams, for a game fowl hen. And that'll give you the best chicks.
They hatch so much easier too.
So much easier.
God.
So tell me this. What is something somebody can do to help control that?
You control the amount of feed the hen's eating, right? And all right, so look, to make a 55-gram egg, the hen has to consume 19 or 20 grams of protein a day. It doesn't matter what the percent of protein is on the bag that you bought, okay? She has to actually eat 19 or 20 grams of real protein, right? Good stuff that she can digest. And that'll give you that 50 to 55 gram egg, right? It'll get you in the range where you want to be. Okay. Game fowl hens should not be laying 80, 85 gram eggs, right? They shouldn't be laying over a 65 gram egg, right? And if they're laying big eggs, you're feeding them too much, right? You need to get your shit under control. Okay.
Man, if I saw a 65-gram egg come out of one of my hatches or my log raise, like, I'd have to check her vent to make sure she was okay. Like, that's astronomical for a game bird.
It's not just the game fowl guys. I see all these, backyard chicken people.
Oh, yeah.
Hobby chicken people, other breeder people, game fowl people, they're holding these eggs in their hand that, is getting close to the size of a baseball, and they think it's funny. Oh, wow, look, I get extra breakfast tomorrow. Well, if you knew the damage you were doing to your hen, yeah, if she's your prize hen and you think it's funny, you just got an extra jumbo out of her, you're an idiot. Okay. Let's just, get your shit together and feed her right. And we don't have that problem. But, like Ron White said, you can't fix stupid. So,
right.
All right. Sorry, Rip. Got on my soapbox.
No, this is all good stuff we need to talk about.
Touche.
Chronic prolapse. Low fertility is another thing. If you're having a problem with fertility chronically, it's probably time to look at your birds and try to figure out what's going on. Now, it may be time to go back to your source and to bring in another bird or two. But let me give you some advice about how you bring in new blood. Can't talk. Most people, if they decide they want new blood, Kerry, what do? They go get a what?
Oh, they go get the first one they find on Facebook.
No, male or female. They get a male or female.
Oh, they're getting a male for sure.
Yeah. And when they get that
I gotta
male,
go get me another rooster.
If they get that male, what are they going to do with him? They're going to breed him to every flipping female on the place.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't work out, they have just screwed up their flock.
The whole flock.
The whole shebang. Get a female, just one female, bring her in and go through your compensation mating plan, mate her to a male that offsets her weaknesses, makes her strength pop out, and then take those chicks and breed those back into the flock.
And see, for me, I'm gonna pick a hen to pair mate with that bird that offsets his traits.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not picking number one. That's just me being cautious. I'm gonna pick number two because I want to see what the chicks look like first.
Well, and
if I get chicks that have screwed up feet, if their heads aren't wide, any of that kind of stuff that you can identify right out of the hatcher, then him and the chicks are gone. And I isolate that one hen probably for a month or two before I let her do anything else. But I don't want him to mess up my queen.
When you bring in new blood, the important thing to remember is to go slow. You'll make more progress going slow that first year or two after you bring in new blood than you will if you try to breed it to everything in your flock. You're just asking for problems, in my opinion. Poor hatchability. A lot of folks don't realize that this can be genetic in nature. It can be related. And it's not something you want to perpetuate in your line of birds. We already talked about abnormal egg size. There's also the abnormal egg shape. Did I see a question popped up a while ago about a soft shell egg?
Yep.
I can't remember.
I got her. Her.
Yep. He had that one waiting.
Yep.
I just saw something I have not seen in over 15, I assume, years. A friend gave me an expensive hen in 2 days. It was obvious something was wrong. The wings were dropped and just standing around. She'd never laid. Turned her out and she laid a shellless egg. I know to cull her, but what is this?
I wouldn't cull her. I would actually quarantine her, feed her a little bit extra special Clark. So, one, the trauma of moving her, and you have no idea how the last person, how the last person took care of her. Now, there is one virus out there that can affect chickens and ducks and other forms of poultry, and it's called egg drop syndrome. You can look it up, egg drop syndrome, and that's the virus EDSV. Yeah, EDSV. But so in the waterfowl flyways, there's some likelihood to it. This was really a problem that they didn't talk about, but this was honestly a problem that was affecting a huge amount of flocks in California, not this year, but last year. And I had a larger flock out there of like 35,000 birds, and they got it. And, hens were dropping eggs wherever, right? They just kind of plop out, weren't in a nest box, a bunch were. No shell at all, no membrane, nothing, just, flopping out whites and yolks. So you can wait it out, right? And she probably is worth it, but keep in mind it's a virus. You're never going to cure it. There's a chance of spreading it. So I would always keep her somewhere separate. But if she starts giving you decent eggs, it does not transmit through the egg. You're not going to, spread it that way. So if you can get one good hatching off of her, she might be worth keeping. So, like I said, you have no idea how she was taken care of before. But if you step up on your nutrition and how you manage her, she could be a valuable asset for the flock. That's my 2 cents worth. That was more like my 50 cents worth. But Frank wants to know, that is what's on my shirt. And that is, so my friend Jen Ariata from Aligajas Bullocks in the Philippines had shirts made. He got some in medium tent size just for me. And that is the
medium
Philippine.
tent size.
Hey, knock it off. That is the Philippine eagle. Okay. So, and on the back, if I showed you the back, there's a snake. All right. Are we caught up? Did I miss any, Carrie?
Did we get this one?
Yeah, that's the one I just had. Oh, yeah,
Yes.
that's the one we just had. Frank seems to think that temperament, in his observance and experience, temperament is 60% genetic and 40% learned behavior. And if they ever go bad, it's hard to bring them back. Rip, thoughts? You're muted, Rip. Unmute.
Sorry about that. I agree
Okay.
with Frank. Once they cross that line, I've never had success getting one to calm back down. And I had little kids for a while, and I got little grandkids for a while, and I'm not going to take a chance. If I have a bird that goes mean, he goes. Just that simple.
Coco Van.
Or chicken and rice, either one.
Cordon bleu, Sunday stew, whatever you want to do with it. You know, chickens are so versatile. You can do whatever you want.
There you
That's
go.
right.
There you go.
What you got, Rip?
I would also take a hard look if my chicks were not growing off the way I thought they should, and I'm feeding a good feed, and hopefully you are. And if I'm doing my management routine and chores the way I should be, that I'm going to look and see what might be going on genetically with those birds. This is a good reason to weigh your birds, weigh your chicks. You know, start out when they hatch, and then every week or two, weigh them just to see how they're coming along, how they're developing. You're probably going to find that some of your birds are going to be producing chicks that develop faster than others. Maybe that's something you want in your line. I don't know. But just something to file away for future thought.
Okay, so your chick size is going to be related to your egg size.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you that most of the game fowl guys that I'm working with, okay, didn't know to weigh the eggs, right? They until tonight, they probably never heard 50 to 55 grams, okay? And, you know, they're hatching almost everything that they collect. They don't do pullet eggs, and they probably don't do, like, you know, double yolkers, but they, you know, they're going to hatch everything in between because they feel it's a necessity. So, I mean, you're right. I don't know how to get guys to weigh chicks and understand that those chick hatch weights are huge, right? Huge. Just as important as those egg weights that you put in the incubator is a big deal. So that's all new information. We can talk about that on another show. But,
You know, one way to look at it is the more information you track, the better job you can do raising birds that really suit your needs, that perform well, that grow well, flesh out well, feather well. The more you know, the better you're going to do.
well, yeah, and tracking those grow outs all the way through, you know, from the day they hatch to the day, you know, all the way along, right? If you weigh them again, if you're wing banding, which you should be, right? And, you know, if you weigh them weekly, you weigh them monthly and track them, write it down, then, you know, you're going to know what families develop faster than others, right? There's going to be slower developing families. There's going to be, like you just said a minute ago. So,
I just saw a question that popped up here, and I wanted to make sure that we answered it. Oh,
which one? That one?
yeah, that's we had a question very similar to that last Thursday night on our Poultry Keepers 360 show.
Yeah.
What would cause chicks to start to fight with each other, even when they have a good amount of feed, water, and space? Genetics again?
I don't think so. I think
maybe not.
I'm finding too much light intensity, right? So, you know, and we did talk about this last week. Okay. The proper amount of light is somewhere between 5 and 10 foot candles, right? And there's a free app you can download for your phone. It'll tell you what the foot candles are. The app is called LUX, because it's a lux meter and a foot candle meter, right? You can download it. Just make sure you get the free version. Check the amount of light where those chicks are, but they do not like high light intensity, right? So I would go with too much light. That's what my gut feeling is on that particular question. So
I'm with you. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. I get this a good bit. So when you're buying your original breeding stock, would you buy all your birds from the same breeder, or can you buy birds from a few different people and then create your own line? My advice is to get them from the same person. Okay. He's going to be, if he's doing his job, all right, he's going to be refining his birds over time. Whenever you cross two lines, they may be two really good lines, but when you cross those two lines and you introduce foreign genetics, it becomes an alphabet soup. And then you have to go back and resort things out, start to refine it again. You're going to set yourself back 3 to 5 years by crossing the lines. At least that's been my experience, and a lot of other folks I know.
I mean, it's like starting over.
It is. It really is. That's what it amounts to. So if you're up for a challenge and you like hard work for a long time, cross lines. If you don't, don't do it.
all right, this is a good question, and I don't know that I have the answer. Rip, what size eggs do the A seals and the ties lay? I mean, what is the expected egg size? I would think they're also in that 50-gram range. The A seals that I have experience with, they're the same. You know, they lay about the same as a game fowl. You know, their body weight's the same. So I would still think you're shooting for that 55 grams. But
yeah, certainly no bigger than 60 grams, and that would be a whopper. I wouldn't.
Right. But as far as I know, the A seals lay about the same size egg as a game fowl. But I don't know that for sure. That's what I'm thinking. From the eggs I've seen from A seal producers, the eggs appear to be the same size as a game fowl egg. So I would still say 50 to 55 grams.
Works for me.
Okay.
I mean, I will say on my games, I will not put an egg in the incubator that is outside of 50 to 60. If it's smaller or bigger, it's getting eaten. It's not going in the incubator.
I've only got one other thing that I had to mention tonight, and then I'll shut up and we can talk about whatever we want to talk about. But I don't know whether you use incubators to hatch your chicks or if you use broody hens to hatch and raise your chicks. Either way works great. I don't really have a strong preference personally. But if you use broody hens, you want to select for females that have good mothering instincts. In other words, when they go broody, do they stick on the nest? Do they hatch those eggs? Or are they too wishy-washy? And they're some of those birds that are off and on, off and on, off and on. And it just ruins the hatch when they do that. So select for good mothering instincts. Not only just on the nest mothering instincts, but do they raise good chicks? Are they healthy? Are they strong? Do the chicks know how to be chickens? That's just my 2 cents for tonight, guys.
Well,
I mean, if a chicken can't chicken, then you don't need the chicken.
Well, I'm even looking for a hen that she's not aggressive, but she's really good at defending her chicks. I mean, we're going all the way on that mothering instinct. So like if I try to get close to those chicks, you know, I'm happy if a hen wants to come at me, right, and keep me away from those chicks. You know, I know it's a pain in the butt. I get it, but that's an instinct that I really want to have.
Yeah.
I don't want a hen that runs away and leaves her chicks standing there. Okay.
Absolutely not.
To me, that is
Absolutely
not a
not.
good mom. Okay. So, Carrie, what kind of incubator are you running? Hatch time?
I have one Hatching Time CT 180. I have 4 GQF 1502s, and I have one Hatching Time HB 500, I believe, is the hatcher. When it comes to chicken eggs, I absolutely love the Hatching Time, because incubating a chicken egg, you need a higher. Again, we've talked about this before. If you're using a hen, science is out the window. But when you're using an incubator, you've got to be precise, and keeping the humidity stable and keeping the temperature where it should be. With the Hatching Time, you literally dial it in and you're done. It'll do it. If you're incubating something that requires stable humidity, it's not easy to do with the GQF. No. I use mine mainly for quail, because you can incubate a quail in just about anything. And, you know, it can be between 30 and 40 and I'm fine with a quail. But my chickens go in my Hatching Time unit.
You know, and Carrie, I've got a Hatching Time too. And I have tried numerous times. I would set the temperature, and I would try to catch it wavering. You know, how much did it vary? 99.5, just rock steady. And I set my humidity 50%. Never wavered up or down.
Yeah, like you see the little tank on the side of it, and you know you'll see the red light come on, and you'll see the little fog, and it sucks it into the unit, and then it'll stop. And when one of those sensors detects that the humidity's dropped, it'll do it again. And it's like you said, I've got a thermometer that works off of Wi-Fi that I have in mine. And I've even at one point put one in the top and one at the bottom. And there's less than a degree of variance between the two thermometers. And hey, that could be the calibration on the thermometer itself, not what's actually in the cabinet.
Well, Kelly's running a multi Matty Coops X.
Matty Coop.
And the temperature is staying stable, right? So it wasn't a temperature issue, but I don't know if the humidity is functioning right. And the reason I say that, he had really good hatch numbers, but we're getting a little bit of curly toe or duck toe out of it, and that's why he asked. And
all right, so you've seen his because you were at his place. Is it a tabletop or is it a cabinet?
Tabletop.
All right. Tabletop incubators, especially the ones with the plexiglass domes, can be really finicky. The first incubator I ever bought was a Nurture Right 360. I don't think there's too many people out there that haven't made that mistake in the get-go, because they're really great with marketing. But I was able to have really good luck with mine. But what I wound up doing is, you know how a lot of y'all have the tables that you take in the living room when you eat in the living room that fold out? All right, so you get you one of those. And if you have a spare bedroom or a bedroom that you don't use, or a closet, preferably, because I actually put mine in a closet. My wife looked at me like I was stupid, but with my nurture right, my little Wi-Fi thing told me that everything was fluctuating. Well, it's in the South. We've got air conditioning. I got a 5-ton air conditioner, which is way oversized for my house, but I got that thing running to keep it 67 degrees. I got ceiling fans, and I was having crappy luck. So I put it on one of those stands, put it in a closet, and the little vent that they have on the top, I got me one of those McDonald's straws because they seem to have the fattest straws. And I bent it and I poked it in that hole. And then I wrapped a beach towel around it, essentially covering up the plexiglass. And so the only thing I could get to was a little hole to put water in, and you couldn't really see anything else. That was the best hatch I ever had out of a tabletop incubator. It was literally full. I can't remember off the top of my head how many chickens one of those will hold, but I only had one that did not hatch out. It also never developed. So it wasn't a hatchability thing. Everyone in there that developed hatched. But that was the crap that I had to go through to get it that way.
His
Those
hatch
little
is good.
tabletops.
His hatch percentage is good, but at a week old or less, like he just had a whole group, and most of them were duck-toed. And
well, that's because his humidity's that's only happens from one of two ways. Either your genetics are crap, which I highly doubt that because he's got a lot of really nice birds, or your humidity is not stable in the hatching phase of the last 3 days or whatever after lockdown.
Yeah,
I would tend to go with the latter.
You got to have it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really believe I've seen his birds, and it is not a genetic issue with Kelly's birds.
It's the same brood stock that he's had for 3 years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not have duck toe last year or the year before from the same genetics. So that's the reason why we're ruling it out. And, they're getting it before they're even old enough for feed to really be an issue. Okay. But, he's on a feed formula that I put together for him. So it's just not. Anyway, we're way off topic with hatchers, but that's fun.
No, that's fine. As long as we're helping folks.
What I would do if I was him is if he has a air compressor, I would almost get violent with that thing, blowing out the fan area and trying to clean that as good as possible.
Yeah.
And then I would take some Clorox cleanup and spray it in there and let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then take that air compressor and blow it all out. Let it sit for a day or two so it can air out, dry out, and, the residual part of the sodium hypochlorite that's in the bleach will dissolve essentially, and try it again, because something's not circulating right in that unit. And that's why he's suddenly having it. If it's the same genetics, the same unit, and it's happening 3 years down the road, there could be a feather stuck inside that thing somewhere that's not letting it circulate.
No, the Matty Coops are brand new, right? These are the first hatches from the Matty Coops, right?
Okay.
So, previous was hen hatch, right? No issues, things like that. So
what kind of humidity is he getting?
I don't know. I mean, when
Kelly, send me a Facebook message tonight or tomorrow when you want to really hash this out, and we'll dive deep into it and figure out what kind of issues.
It's got a water bottle, right? It's got a water bottle that feeds the humidity thing, and everything that he's reading on it says the humidity is right at 55, but something's off, right?
See, in my tabletop, I try not to get it over 45.
Well, but
because
you're in humid Alabama.
Well, yeah, but what I wanted inside that incubator should be the same. But I don't know what it is with those. I don't know if it's because they're so small. Everybody knows the first chick that pops, the humidity starts to spike and it'll shoot high real fast. With those small units like that, what I found is if you keep it to 40 to 45, which is low when you're doing it yourself, yes, I will agree. But when you do it, keep it there. When those suckers start hatching, that's when it goes up, but it's not too late at that point. So it's less of a humidity causing the foot problem.
Sean agreed with you. He put his he put his Nature Right 360 in the closet, and
with a heater.
He put a small heater in there to maintain it at an even 75. He just had 16 to 17
because with either the blanket or whatever to keep it stable outside, because those acrylic tops so much can affect those.
Yeah, Sue agrees with the blanket. So
yeah,
Frank's not doing the incubator thing. He's just doing hen hatch. You can't go wrong with a hen hatch. But
so I got an idea. I want to know if anybody has ever crossed a hatch or a mug or an A-seal with a silky.
I don't even want to know what that looks like. Come on, man.
Okay, look, let me tell you something, Jeff. Silkies, I don't know if they can get any uglier than what they are. Okay. If they're high on any list, ugly chicken is one of them. But if you crossed one with a game fowl, and so, it would have a little of its tendencies or characteristics or whatever, and it's a silky, it's got silky genetics, so it's gonna go broody. And then you get a couple of your, a lot of your brood stock, stick them up under the half silkies. I mean, could it be the best of both worlds? I definitely would not hatch a chick off of a half silky, half game fowl for any purpose other than just to see if this would work. Which in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I got a lonely hen in a 3 foot by 3 foot pen that if I could find a silky rooster, we could find out. But I'm not buying a silky. I have standards. But, that could be a thing. I mean, Sue has a little silky raising Rhode Island Reds, and she says the silky's the best.
They are great moms. They are no doubt about it. They'll sit on a golf ball.
Look, could silkies be the foster parents of the chicken world?
Well, the problem is they're not big enough to do much. I used them for hatching quail because I could put 15 or 20 quail eggs under one of them, but you about 2 or 3 chicken eggs and they're full.
Okay, so you'd have to get you a bunch of silky hens. Which, I will say, I don't know if they're pure or if they're crosses, but I have a Hispanic friend that lives about 45 minutes away that has a pretty extensive game fowl operation, and he's also got like 50 silkies.
Look, if you just need an incubator and a chick tender, there's nothing wrong with that, right? You can't beat a silky for their mothering attributes. So, but what are you going to do with them when you're not in breeding season? Are you going to feed them for a whole year just to have an incubator the next year?
Okay, so
I don't think they eat that good.
all right, so silkies, they might, if you're feeding them right, they're going to eat what, 2 ounces a day?
2 to 3.
All right, so we'll say on the high side, they're going to eat that divided by this many. Okay, so we're talking about 68 pounds of feed.
For
Now,
how long?
some of it for a year.
Per silky.
for the one bird. So
Yeah.
I mean, some of these cheapskates feeding $10, $12 feed is cheaper than an NR360.
I can't even believe you said that. All right, show's over. Let's go. It's bedtime.
But I mean,
We don't do cheap feed here.
right? But
Used
it's
to
a
be-
bag
used to
and a
be
half,
strung
so you're
up.
still talking like $40 for a bag and a half of feed.
Yeah, but she's only gonna brood 12 chicks, right? So, I mean,
Well, again, if people would stop being cheap,
I know.
and I'll say this too, when I had that NR360 and I was like, this thing sucks. I have all kinds of problems. It almost has to get to a science to be able to hatch from it. And I started looking, I was like, okay, can I get a few of these and just like corner off a room in the house or what? And then I decided that I was going to get an incubator, a cabinet style. When I looked at the hatching times, I was like, okay, they got the 60. I really want more. So the 120 is just a little more, double the capacity, but it's not double the money. But then I'm like, well, the 180 is only another $100. So I gave myself a loan essentially. I used my American Express. I ordered the CT 180 and I had some the Highline chicks, tossed a couple Rhode Island Reds in with the Highlines, and they went to town. And I started hatching out barnyard mix, and I was selling them for $5 a pop. And in 4 months, I made all my money back and then some off of chickens that were good for nothing but laying eggs. And then I had a really good incubator to do what I needed to do with my quality birds. So there's a suggestion. So $40 per silky for 12 eggs, or $1,000 for a 180 that you don't have to feed. You just have to give it water.
Yeah.
Anybody got any other questions? We're
No.
over an hour.
We're way over an hour, but yeah. Mill Branch, you need to watch the show from last week. We covered split wing, knock knee, and bow legged. And yes, it's all genetic.
Yep. All right.
All
Until
right.
next week. We'll see y'all later.
See ya.